How do you create a custom frame for Canva? This is something that has actually shifted a lot lately with things changing behind the scenes. Old methods not working, but there now is a new best method for creating a custom frame for Canva. It's quick, it's easy, it's hard to mess up, and I'm going to teach you how to do it right now. I'm going to launch a new blank design. Then I'm going to choose File, Place, and I'm going to place an image in here. So I'll grab this image here. I'm going to place it so it covers the entire screen here. I can hit Control-0 to recenter. Then I'm going to grab my lasso tool. You can use any selection tool, but I'm going to use this lasso tool just to draw out a selection in here. And then I'm going to make sure I have it on Add up here. I'm just going to add some other shapes so that it's not just one shape. It's also got some little parts like this. And I'll even come in here and I'll choose Subtract right here, just so we can put some holes in it as well. And then once we have all of that selected, then I'm going to come up here and go Vector. I'm going to go Convert to Curves. Then once we have that curve layer, I'm just going to drag it right down, use as a clipping mask, and then finally I'm going to go File, Export, and we'll go Export again. We're going to come down to the bottom. We have this new Canva design option. You can have it ask for location. I'm just going to tell it where I want to put it. I'm going to put it in this folder. I'm also going to put Show in Browser, so once it saves it, it's automatically going to open it up in Canva. So we'll give it a second. It's going to upload it to Canva, finalize that, and then it will open that Canva design for us. And yes, it opened up in Canva here, and if I right click on this, we can see that I can detach image, delete that. Yes, this is a frame, so I can come drag any image into that very quickly, able to create a custom frame. And we can see that yes, it did maintain the cutout parts of this frame, the extra parts of these frames. These are things that might get dropped if you save something as a PDF. The new preferred method is this saving as a Canva design, now that we have the integration between Affinity and Canva. So that's it. It's fast, it's easy, it works. Now I know we went through that fast. I'm going to slow it down now and go through the steps, but if you don't want to take notes, I've also made this available as a free cheat sheet you can download. So if you want to get that free cheat sheet, you can just go down to the first pinned comment down below and download that at your convenience. Okay, let's slow this down a little bit and review the steps just so you're very familiar and understand the steps. And then we'll also run through a couple examples just so you can see maybe some other things you consider and how you can get really creative with this, especially with this new method we have of exporting directly to a Canva design. So I'm going to come in here. This is the example we just did, but I'm going to go ahead on this clipping mask and I'm going to go ahead and release this mask. And so we'll turn that off for a minute. So first step which we did was we just placed an image in here. So we want to do that place because if you just clip a JPEG, this can mess up and just give you a rectangle frame. So the first step is you always want to go File, Place, and then you're going to choose an image. And it doesn't matter what the image is. Any image, just choose any image and get it to fill the frame. Again, you're going to be able to detach that once it's a Canva frame. Put any image you want in there, so it doesn't matter what sort of image you place. So I've placed this image here, but again, that can be anything. So that was step one. Step two is you need some sort of selection in here. Now, I used just the sort of lasso tool in here before, this freehand selection tool, but you can use any selection tool you want in here. You could draw something out with the pen tool. You can use one of the automated methods for selecting by luminosity, by color range, anything you want. You just need to create some sort of marching ant selection or directly create some sort of vector with the pen tool or something like that, because ultimately you're going to end up with that vector, either by using something like the pen tool to start, using the shape tools to start, combining shapes together, or you're going to draw that marching ant selection and then you're going to convert that to curves. And when we convert something to curves, that's when we're converting it from a pixel-based selection to something that's a vector. So I'm going to go ahead and do something very simple now. So we'll just grab the rectangular marquee. I'm going to drag something like this, but then let's give it some more interesting edges. So I'll come up here and I'm going to make sure I can see on screen this little contextual bar. It's just outside of my recording area now, so let me drag it back. And again, up here you can choose whether you're adding to a selection, subtracting from a selection. So I'll just go in here and we'll just give this some more interesting edges here so it's not just this strict rectangle. I'm going to give it some different little shapes here. Just drag out a little bit here just to make it a little bit more interesting. Again, anything you want to do, this is totally up to you. Now you can mix and match what selection tools you're using, whether you're subtracting, adding to this. So I'll go ahead and come in here and we're just going to go back to maybe the freehand selection tool now. I want to make sure I'm subtracting. So I'm going to come in here and just start to knock out some of these edges a little bit. Again, if we end up with something that's totally unique, that's what we're going for. And if we have these parts here where we see if I do something like this, then suddenly we're getting these separate pixels that aren't connected with that. Well, in the past, if you just use that PDF method, that would start to break things with recent changes in Canva, but now we're not going to worry about this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We're just going through these steps again. So again, any sort selection you want. Now, if you'd use the pen tool or something like that, you'd already have a curves layer. Since we don't have a curves layer, since we do have these marching ants, this is when we're going to need this step where we go under the vector menu and choose convert to curves. So once you have something like this, where you actually have a curves layer, whether it's by, using shape tools, the pen tool, or creating a selection like we did and then converting it to curves, either way, once you do that, then you're going to bring it right over the area that you brought in, so that file that you placed, and we're going to drag it right over the thumbnail until we see use as clipping mask. Then we're going to go ahead and release that. Now, at this point, we can export this off and we'll have our frame. Now, in a future example, which I'll do right after this, we can see you don't have to stop there. You can bring in some supporting assets, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But for now, the next step, once you have what you want here, then you're just going to go under the file menu. We're going to do export. In the past, what you would do is go export, and previously you had to go under PDF. And under PDF, you have all sorts of different options in here. So it was easy to get these mixed up. And in the most recent changes to Canva, when you come in here, if you have something like this part here that's disconnected, it's going to mess up when you have PDF. Don't have to worry about any of that anymore. Right now, you're just going to go down to Canva Design. This is the new method, Canva Design. Tell it where you want to save it, or tell it to ask you when it does it, and you can click this sort of checkbox on and off here if you want it to immediately open in Canva. So go ahead and choose export. It's going to upload it to Canva into that directory where I told it to save it, and then once it finalizes that, it's going to directly open up in Canva, and we'll be able to see it and make sure it's a working frame. So it's trying to open in my other window again, but I'll just drag that over so we can see it. Right click on it, detach image, delete that. We can see, yes, even this part here that was sort of disconnected from this main frame, it still kept that. So very cool. Just like that, we have this very interesting shape that we can now use as our own custom frame. And when you have something like this, you can go ahead and file, and you can save this off to a particular folder. Then you can navigate back to it any point in time, just going under your projects tab, finding that folder. And so I'm just going to search real quick in here for favorite, because I know I have some favorite frames and stuff. So let's just look and go to a new page here. If I look at my folders here, we have favorites, favorite frames. So I can see I've done things like this in the past, and very easily I can grab something like that and make use of it. So as you create these frames, you might want to also think about how you're going to organize them, how you're going to save them off, so you can access them very easily in the future. But let's jump back over now to Affinity and look at a more complicated example where you can also bring in more assets. And I also want to mention one viewer question I got, and mention what happens if you already have a vector shape of some sort, or a vector design that you want to make use of for creating a frame. Let me walk you through another example real quick, show you how you can get very creative with this. So I went ahead and placed an image like we've done before. So again, doesn't matter what image, just place something to fill the whole screen. I'm actually going to place a second image now, because I have an image that sort of has the area I want to turn into a frame. So a lot of times you'll start like this, where you have an asset that represents the area you want to become a frame. So I have this very interesting textured fabric here, or paper I should say, with these frayed edges that I think are pretty cool. So this represents the area I want to turn into a frame. And you can very easily find images like this, or you know what, I heard there's this thing called AI that could generate images. Actually not a bad use of AI to create an asset where that's not going to be the final product. You're actually just using it in a creative purpose. So you can very easily give it prompts like this and have it create something where something white is on a black background. So you can come in here and make selections pretty easily, save yourself some time. So what I want to do is I'm going to push this even farther just so I can make the selection. But first I'm going to go ahead and create a copy of this. I'm going to select this, hit Control J, just to create another copy of that layer. Now, I like to create copies like this because it's good non-destructive editing. I have an image I can fall back to if I mess up this copy I'm working on, and I am actually going to intentionally make some changes to it. I'm going to come in here and add a levels adjustment layer. And then this levels adjustment layer is going to let me push my black and white points. I'm actually just going to take the white point and really push it, and then bring in the black point a little bit and push that way, just so we can really start to accentuate the difference between the white area and those frayed edges and then the background. So I'm just dialing that into something I like. So I'll just go with something like that. And then what I'm actually going to do is select this layer, control click on the layer name below just to select that as well. Then I'll right click and we'll go ahead and merge selected. So I just merged those, including that levels adjustment, down into one layer now. I still have the other layer in the background, which is important because there are some things I want to do with that original copy as well. But with this new copy here, now I know I can very easily make a selection based on these this white range, which is totally different from the black range. So I'm just going to come in here and go pixel selection. You can make selections based on tonal range. So let's just get the highlights here. It's going to do a good job selecting all of that. And then I will go ahead and just hit Control J just to paste what is selected there, copy that from the existing layer up onto another layer. So we can see now I have that up there on its own layer sitting over top of everything else. Now, that's a good start. So I might, for now, take this part and turn this into a frame. So again, Control Select, and then we're going to use this vector. We're going to use this Convert to Curves. Now, when we do this, we are going to lose a little bit of that edge detail just because it's not going to make a perfect conversion to curves, but it's going to be good enough for our purposes. So we'll go ahead, do that. We'll let it spin away for a minute, and now we can see, yes, it's created a new copy of this, and it kept a lot of this detail. We lost a little bit, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. Now, there's one thing I want to bring back. This is cool, but if we look at the original image right here, I really like how you can see this texture, these folds, sort of these creases in the paper. So what I want to do now is bring back some of those shadow areas. And there are a number of ways we can do this, but there's one way that's going to be really effective, and that's by making use of channels, especially since we're working with a black and white image at this point. So I'm going to go over the channels, and anytime you're under channels, you can look and you can view the individual channels by clicking on them. We're not seeing anything different right now. This is a black and white grayscale image. There isn't color information, so we're not seeing the reds, the greens, the blues as we click through these channels. However, you can right click on any channel and you can load that channel to a pixel selection. So what does that mean? Well, when you're working on a grayscale image, you can basically think of luminosity values. So anything that's white is something that when you load it to a selection, it's going to be fully selected. If you load something that is black, it's not going to be selected at all. And anything grayscale, it's going to be partially selected, which is exactly what we want to do with this image. But so if I right click now on this blue channel, and I load this to pixel selection, we're not really seeing, we can see these marching ants, but we can't really tell what we've done. I'm going to go back up to the top here and hit this just to make sure we reset this so that all channels are being shown. And we come back to our layers panel now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer above this curves layer. Now let's think about what we did. We just loaded a channel as a selection. And like I said, white areas are going to be fully selected, black areas not selected at all, and all these grayscale areas partially selected. Well, I'm not concerned with the white areas. I want the shadow areas, and I loaded all those white areas. So what I want to do is actually flip my selection. So now if I go to pixel, I go to pixel selection, and I come up here and I just go to invert. Now essentially I've loaded those black shadow areas. Now you can't tell anything yet, but let me put on this curves layer, and then with the black here, I'm going to use Control Backspace to fill with the black over here, and we're going to see the magic of this. So Control Backspace, and boom, look at that. Look what I was able to bring in here. I was able to bring back all this texture, which is something we're going to use as our overlay that sits on top of our frame. Now, right now, it grabbed all this border area as well because that was sort of all dark as well. But I want to get rid of that, so I'll just Control click to load this. Once again, I'll go pixel, I'll go pixel selection, invert, and then I'm going to come up here and we're going to delete that because I just want any part that covers the frame. Now basically what I have is I have this shadow overlay, so let's name this here. Let's call this shadow overlay, something like that. You don't have to name it, but we're going to name it just so we know what we do. Then this curves layer is what's going to become our frame. And then if we wanted to add in something else, we could add in something else as well. So let me go down here. Let me just grab my rectangle tool here. Let's just go ahead and come up here and grab white. Now I just changed this curves layer because that was highlighted on that. So let me hit Control Z. Let me hit escape to get off of that. Then I'll change the white. Then I'm going to come down here and drag a rectangle just so we have a rectangle behind everything in the background. And again, we'll push that all the way to white. And we're going to put that down below everything, even behind the woman here that's going to become our frame. So now we have the woman here, which we're going to clip. So let's grab this curves layer. Remember, this is when we're going to take and actually convert this to our frame. So use this clipping mask. So now we're clipping that. We're going to bring in this shadow overlay as well. Now, if we wanted to do something else as well, we could, once again, we could select this whole area. Now let me just create a new layer above that. Let's fill with black again. So control backspace. So now I just have this black layer. I'm actually going to bump that behind my mask here. Then I'll grab my move tool. I'm going to use shift and click to move it around a little bit. I want to make it so it just gives a little bit of an edge to this, so it looks like it sort of has sort of this depth to it. But I'm actually going to create a second copy of that as well. So control J to duplicate. I'll grab the bottom version of that. I'm going to drag the bottom version out even more. We're going to go Pixel, Filters. We'll go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. And so maybe I'll drag out a blur, something like that. We'll go ahead and apply that. That looks pretty good. So now what we're going to be taking back over, I can turn off the white in the background, because all we want to take over is the background here, which is going to be the blur behind everything. We're going to add in this black layer. Let me turn off the blur. This black layer that just gives it a slight edge. And then we're also going to have the frame itself. And then above it, we're going to have this shadow overlay. So we're going to turn on all the layers we want to take back to Canva. Now we'll just come over File, Export. You know this part, Export. Once again, we're going to have it go to Canva. And we'll have it show in browser here. So there we're going to do Export. Now, this is a big file. It's a little complicated, but it's going to happen relatively quickly here. So it says finalizing. So we'll just give it a second here to process this, take all this into Canva. And what we've done now is we've taken more than just a basic frame. We've also brought in these supporting elements. Now it says the operation is taking a little longer than expected. It's going to finish up here in a second, but just because this is a big file, now we see if it's completed. Because it's a big file, because it takes a little while, sometimes it does that, and then sometimes even though I had that auto open set, it did not automatically open that. But let me just pull that up for you on screen. So here it is in Canva. And so if we look at this now, so let me just click on anything and then go under position. So we can go look at our layers tab and we see that, okay, this top layer, if I turn this on and off, the transparency, we can see that is the overlay. Then below it, we have that frame layer. And then below it, we have that slight background to give it some depth. And then we have the blur, which is going to be our drop shadow. So now we have this cool thing where I could come in here and I can very quickly use control bracket keys to bring this in front and behind, because if I bring it in the front, then I can go in here, add another element real quick. Then I can drop it back. And then on top of it, I have all this cool shadow information. Make sure I'm the right layer so then I can come on top and get this overlay thing here, and we can very quickly dial up and down how much of this detail we want coming through. So again, if we want to add another image, very easy. We just drop this in the layer stack here, come to our elements menu, try a new photo that we want to try, and then once again we can come in here, make sure we go to our position menu, make sure we get our layers reordered the way we want, and very easily we can add that in. We decide, hey, the shadows may be more strong than I want it to be. We can drop it down. Oops, make sure you're on the right layer. I want it to be on this one right here. So come in here and drag this drop shadow down so a little bit so it's not quite as strong. So just very easily a way you can take a Canva frame. You can still do all the things you can normally do with a Canva frame. So I can come in here, if I bring the frame to the top, I can very easily double click on it, reposition my subject within the frame, all the stuff you normally do. We just now have some supporting elements so we can do some other things as well. Hey, maybe I want to make a copy of this frame as well. You know what? Let's make this particular copy here just a solid color. So let's give it a color like this. Let's make this way bigger like this. And then this one, you know, we're going to position this one to the background here, something like this, just to add another little bit of a graphical effect to this. Let's push it all the way back. And so now we have something like that. So lots and lots of creative opportunity here if you just take your frames to the next level. And yes, we still have custom frames. You just want to be using this new methodology that we're talking about in this lesson. Before we end this video, I wanted to discuss this viewer question. What they bring up here sort of illustrates some of the finer points about creating custom frames and some things you need to keep in mind. So this viewer said, my question is, maybe you have a video for this already, when I use the object selection tool and convert my lines are a mess. I have played around with tolerance, feathers, smoothing, and it's still an issue each time. These are high quality PNGs that I create in Illustrator. So I don't think it's my image. So I have to manually go to each node and manipulate to correct the shape, which would be okay if it was only a handful, but my goodness, my last one had so many. It wasn't even that complex of a shape. Literally a circle with the squares cut out, with square cutouts inside of it. Any ideas or suggestions would be appreciated. So this literally circle with squares cut out inside of it made me think that this user that asked this question is maybe overthinking it and overcomplicating it, which I totally understand. It's easy to do. It's easy to get caught up in this. But let me just show you some considerations you need to think about when you're creating a custom frame like this. So let's just come over and look at this example. This looks like sort of what that user was talking about, where he had a circle with some squares or rectangles cut out inside of it. So maybe the black area is what he wants to turn into a frame. And it sounds like he tried to do this by making some sort of selection, and then I'm not totally sure after that, but let's just run through this. He mentioned the object selection tool, so I could grab that object selection tool. I could come over this. Let's make sure it's set to make a new selection here. I could come over here and click on this. And then if we still need to knock out the circles, I could change this to subtract, and I could come in here, hold down the Alt key on these different areas here. I'm just going to knock out these different squares here, just so we have something like that. Now, once I have this selection, this is where, again, I'm not totally sure on his workflow. If I were to come in here now, before I do this, actually, let me just go ahead and duplicate this layer just so we have a backup copy of that. I'm going to duplicate that. But now on this top layer here, with this selection, anytime you get to the selection point in Affinity, you can come up here. We have marching ant selections. Anytime you have that marching ants on screen, you can always go under Vector Convert to Curves. Now, if you do this, we're going to watch and see what happens here. It's going to take a second, and then it's going to create a curves layer. And so here we can see this is what our curves layer is. I could come in here and add just a rectangle in the background. Let's make it black or something, some different color here, just so we can see that. Actually change the color of my shape on top, which I didn't mean to. Let's drag that back on top. We'll make this white, just so we can see here. But so I have this white cutout here, white circle with the cutout, and we converted it pretty easily. Now, he was running into an issue where he mentions the node tool and a bunch of different things. You're not really going to have that problem if you go vector convert to curves, because it's going to do one solid curve. So I think maybe he was using image trace, but even with the methodology we used, we could have done it smarter. We still have some errors here. And by errors, I mean it just comes down to how perfect do you want this to be. If I zoom in here, you can see at the bottom right here, we do have some imperfections where anytime you come in here and you run a convert to curves on a selection, it's not going to perfectly match that selection. It is creating those vector shapes, those equations to make up that shape. It's not always going to perfectly match your selection. We see right here also not a perfect circle. So the point I want to make is anytime you create your own vector shapes, you can get a cleaner result. So if instead of doing it this way, if I just come in here and let's just go to a blank screen or something. Actually, I'll leave this on here for a reference, but let me just go ahead and come up here and let's grab an actual shape tool. So I'm going to grab the ellipse tool here. I'll hit the escape key just so we deselect that current layer. Then I'm going to come in here. Let's just give this a different color. And I'm going to drag out a circle. I'm going to come over and wait until I find the center of that current curves layer that's there. Then I'm going to click and start to drag out, but then I'll hold down the Control key and the Shift key. So that would be Command and Shift if you're working on a Mac, Control and Shift here on Windows. And I'm basically going to make this to be the size of the circle that's there. Let's go in here and let's lower this transparency a little bit just so we're going to be able to see through, because now I also want to create just a rectangle cutouts where I want these other cutouts to be. So I'm going to switch here to the rectangle tool. And then again, we're going to just start in the upper left. We're going to drag out one there. We're going to drag out one here, and it's sort of snapping to the shape below. So this could be just a JPEG layer behind it, and you wouldn't have these guides to snap to. But since we did that step before where we turned that into sort of a curve, we have that. But even if you didn't have this, you could eyeball this. But the point we're going here is showing that if you want really clean lines in your final shape that's going to become your mask, then you're going to want to just work with vectors throughout and skip that part where you create something as a pixel layer or selection and then convert. So now that I have all these things on screen, now I could select all of these here. So I could select all these shapes that we just did. First of all, let me clean up the circle. So the circle might be a little bigger than we want. So I could come in here and let's just make it sized in on this side so we match the existing circle a little better. I'll do it up here. Again, we're not going for perfect here, and I may be getting my ratios and stuff off here, but we're just going to make it basically match the circle that was there. And then we'll select all of these layers that we just created. And then I could go ahead and bring the transparency all the way up. And then if you go over to the Vector Studio, you could find a tool that would be perfect for this. This is where you might use something like the shape builder tool. And with the shape builder tool, you can come in here, you can draw lines and sort of connect all these shapes together, or you can start to cut out areas. So for example, if I were to just drag a line here, I could join those two areas together. They become one shape. I could join these together. They become one shape. I'm actually going to hit Control Z to undo that. Instead, I'm going to hover over it with the shape builder tool. I'm going to hold down the Alt on my keyboard. That would be Option on Windows, but Alt here on Mac, and I can just knock out those shapes. So very easily with the shape builder tool, we can come in here and we can build something like this. So if I turn off those other layers now, we can see that I have the exact same thing. It is a curves layer, except the difference between this and the one below it, let me just turn on that background so we can see a little bit better again. If I zoom in here, we'll look at the imperfections we have when we created a selection, then made it convert to curves. It had to try to build the perfect curve. It did not do that. But when we came in here and we did it ourselves, we can see that we have perfect edges. We have this perfect shape. So the point I'm making with all of this is if you have something and you can very easily create the vector shapes, or if you want to use something like the pen tool and get nice, clean vector lines, that's the way to do it. Anytime you have it manually select something and then you convert it to curves using this vector convert to curves, it's not gonna be perfect. Okay, you're going to have some imperfections. It may not matter based on what you're doing, but if it does matter, if that perfection matters to you, then you just want to work in vector throughout. So let's drive this home with an example. Now that viewer question, he said that he began in Illustrator. Now I'm not sure if he had vectors. It doesn't sound like he did because he said he brought in a PNG, but if you were working in Affinity and you had vectors, it wouldn't make sense to go back to a PNG, bring that into Affinity, and then convert it back into vectors, because then you're adding a step. You're doing the same thing twice. You can actually open Illustrator files directly here in Affinity. So I could go ahead and go File, Open. This is an Illustrator file, so I'm going to go ahead and open up this Fox image here. Okay, we'll open it up on screen. Now there's actually more stuff in here than I need, so let me just go ahead in here and throw out some of these extra layers. Let's see if I can drag this one down so it's outside of that group. Let's throw this away. So now yes, delete objects. So now we just have this here. Now, this actually is all the individual vectors that I used to create this one shape here. So we have a bunch of different curved layers in here. Now, what if we were to place an image? So we always want to clip something. So we're going to use that file place step that we've been using. And let's just grab that same image we've been using, because again, the image doesn't matter, because we're going to always be able to swap in a new image once we actually have a frame in Canva. So we'll drag this out. I will put a little fox on top here, so let's make sure she's outside of this group. Let's drag her down. So now we have our fox, and then we have the woman below this. Now, a couple things. First of all, if I were to create a selection of this, so imagine you just brought a PNG in here and you made a selection like this, that's when you would go vector and you would go convert to curves. Now when we do this, if we zoom in, so let me just hit Z to zoom in, we can see that this is not matching perfectly. So if we go and we just take this image outside the group here, let me drag it up, see if I can get it outside the group here. There we go. Now we can see that this just is not matching correctly. So let me just zoom in right here so we can see how we sort of have a nice clean curve right here, a nice point. It comes to a sharp point. If I turn on that conversion we just did, we can see this is not matching up. So this is a much less pleasing result. We've lost a lot of the detail. So this is where if you have vector, don't go back and create a selection and convert it. You want to stay in that vector mode. So if you have a vector like this, this is what you actually want to use to create your clipping mask. But let me zoom out here. But if you have something like this where you've brought a file over, again, the nice thing about that vector convert to curves is it usually does have one clean curve layer, where if you bring something in, you might have all these different curve layers like this. But what if I were to take the whole thing and I were to clip this whole thing like this, use as a clipping mask? What if I exported this? Well, this is going to be problematic. If I go File, Export, export. We choose this option here for to Canva. We're going to go ahead and we're going to export it. We're going to open it up, and it's going to look like it's going to work. It's going to look like it worked, but did it work? Actually, probably there's going to be a problem. Let's check this out. So here it is now. It came in here. We're thinking, oh, great. It looks like this worked, but can I detach image? Oh, yes, I can. But then when you do, it converted it to a rectangle. This is the problem that exists now if you bring things in and they're not formatted correctly, or if you use that PDF option, this can happen. So what did we want to do instead? So back here, let me just hit Control Z to undo what we did. So let me just hit Control Z. So now we have this group here. So if we have this group, if I had instead selected all these curves layers like this, the entire group, so I could also just click on the group icon right here, and then I went vector, and I went geometry, and I went add, then suddenly it converts them all into one clean curve layer. Now sometimes when you're doing this, you can have little issues and you have to get rid of certain layers, but what you want to do is you want to get it down to one curves layer. And I still have all that detail where I have these nice sharp details that I created by creating a vector image inside of Illustrator. But now if I use this as a clipping mask, now when I go File and I go Export and I go Export, we're going to choose this Canva design. We'll go ahead and we'll move it into whatever folder we want. We're going to go ahead and export it. And then let's see what happens when it opens up in Canva. It's going to look like it did before when it first comes in, but then we're going to see, wait a minute, this time it actually worked. So now I'm going to come up here. We're going to right click on this detach image. And yes, it has preserved that frame along with all of this nice detail here. So you can take any image and drag it in, reposition it however you want. We've kept all that detail. So you got to get it down to that single curve layer. You don't want to have multiple overlapping curves layers because then things are going to break. So that's it. I hope you learned something. I hope you take advantage of this new custom frame method for Canva to create some cool custom frames. Don't forget you can get that free cheat sheet down below in the comment if you're interested in that. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for supporting this channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.